Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM, channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight on the Daily Drum, we have a rundown of some of the top stories of the week. We'll discuss last night's Ward 8 election results, what the IRS now says preachers can say from the pulpit, President Trump's latest political gaffe. We'll also touch on the beef between Shaquille O'Neal and RG3 and the WNBA. We are at the Reporters Roundtable with analysis on those stories and much more. My guests are Paige Hopkins, social media host at Axios, new to the program, and James Wright, reporter with the Washington Informer. Thank you both for joining the conversation. Glad that you're here.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. So first and foremost, and we have, oh my goodness, so very, very much to talk about. Let us talk about Trayon White. The initial results say that he has won re-election to his Ward 8 seat in D.C. Certainly the official results will not be announced until next month after the D.C. Board of Elections has a chance to count the mail-in ballots. But the reality is, unless there's a major change, he's back in office. Your thoughts about that, Paige?
Yeah, I mean, he was the front runner throughout the election. He did it without a lot of money in the race, a lot of funding. And I think this is just what the people wanted. I mean, it's not a big surprise, right? Like, the people in Ward 8 support him, and we knew that, and the election results showed that, even though his opponents had experience running for this seat and had, many connections to Ward 8 as well. So I'm not shocked. I think what will be most interesting is what happens next with his colleagues on the council. There's talk of whether or not they're going to potentially try to remove him again. So I'll be looking forward, really. I think the election result is probably the least surprising storyline out of this.
What do you think, James? I spoke with Council Chair Phil Mendelson just a few days ago, and I asked him again, if Trayon White were to be reelected, would he lead a move on the DC Council to have him removed again? His words were, I assiduously have refused to answer that question.
Well, let me just say that I was hoping that there was a scintilla of a hope that one of the three others would edge it out so the people of Ward 8 could move on. But you have to understand something about Ward 8, Paige and Harold. Trayon White is Ward 8. A lot of people, when they look at Trayon White, they think of Marion Barry. Those are the people, those who didn't grow up with him. Trayon is Ward 8. So when they feel that he is being under attack, they're going to support him. And yes, Harold, you're right about your earlier point about the other candidates having the qualifications. But again, I stress Trayon White is Ward 8. Now, I hope the council does not move to strip him of his seat again. I think that they need to just go through the process, the judicial process, in terms of what's going to happen in this trial starting in January, and let that be what it may. But you got to understand Ward 8. If you understand Ward 8, you understand why Trayon White is so popular there, why he's well liked, even though, as Chuck Dees, the political analyst, pointed out, 71% of Ward 8 voters did not vote for him.
Yeah, and I think the count that I was hearing yesterday is that there were maybe 4,000 people who actually voted out of tens of thousands, which, it just makes you wonder, is that kind of an indictment on just where we are as it relates to voting in the first place. It's a special election, but all elections are important. And it makes you wonder, Paige, who is really paying attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid question, right? There's a lot of distrust in the system overall. So maybe sentiments of why should I vote? It's also the middle of July. People are focused on other things. So the timing is not ideal. And I think, distrust in the system in some ways draws people to Trayon White. I think, voters are informed. They know about the charges and the things that he has been accused of. And the ones that still supported him, maybe they don't trust that that's accurate. Maybe they, he's pleading not guilty. They trust that he's not done it, and that's their right to do. But I think the fact that voter turnout is so low, we know local elections, voter turnout is generally low. And again, like I said, it is the middle of July. People are trying to go to the beach, enjoy the rest of the summer vacation that they have. Voting in an election, while very important, is not at the top of the priority list for a lot of people, especially if you don't trust the system and trust that your vote really matters anyways.
And, to your point, James, as it relates to what Council Chair Phil Mendelson mentioned to me, that, he didn't necessarily want to talk about it. He didn't say that he would move to have him removed again if he were reelected. But there are only we are only 5 or 6 months away from his trial.
Right.
As Paige suggested, don't believe your lying eyes when it comes to the evidence that the Department of Justice and the FBI says it has against him. And also, again, to your point, we know Marion, you and I, James, at least, we knew Marion Barry.
Yes.
Trayon White is not Marion Barry, but he represents Ward 8, and there were obviously enough people there to reelect him. And so maybe this is deja vu all over again. We will just have to see. I want to move on to the next topic. Again, DC Mayor Bowser's 2026 budget, making the preliminary first passing during the first vote. But there are so many issues in this, James, and I'll start with you. First of all, Initiative 82, tipped wages. Gosh, this is such a messy story.
It is a messy story. And the thing is that under normal circumstances, we would all be for the tip wage workers, because people in this very expensive city need to have higher wages. They need to have better benefits. And people who are working restaurants and other types of businesses like that, they need to have wages that they can live on. And I mean, really live on and live well on. The problem is that you're having a situation where we're recovering from the pandemic. We're still recovering from the pandemic economically, and things are not going well for the restaurant industry. As a matter of fact, we've had 60 restaurants closed this year so far, and the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington estimates, Harold, that by the end of 2026, 100 restaurants in total will be finished. That's not good for the DC economy. That's not good for the city. Whether that should be laid at the hands of I-82, I don't know. So if it sounds like I'm a bit wishy-washy on this issue, it's because I support more money for anybody getting more money, but I think we also need stronger businesses.
Yeah, and look, let us just say, whether you are eating at a mom and pop restaurant in the District of Columbia, or you're doing your Ruth Chris or your Ebbett's Grill or what have you, eating out in DC is extremely expensive. And it just makes me wonder, Paige, whether or not there are some restaurants that can handle the Initiative 82 and others, if you only have 2 or 3 waiters.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, restaurants, even in the best of times, run on razor thin profit margins. So it's,
Right.
most restaurant owners aren't bringing in a whole lot of money, even in great times. And so I think it's really valid. Like, a lot of restaurant owners have already said before the initiative passed, and now are saying that this isn't something that can work well for them. And I think James's stats about the restaurant closures so far this year prove that. I think one argument that a lot of people have made that I'm hearing is that, people say I-82 puts more money in these service workers' pockets, but then there's also arguments from some service workers who are saying, actually, this takes money away from me because people are confused with the service fees, people are tipping me less, and so I'm actually making way less money, even though technically my minimum wage has been raised. So it's such a sticky issue, and it seems like there's not going to be resolved anytime soon. The initiative passed, and we're still talking about it, and now the staggered raises of the minimum wage, and we're pausing it, and it's in the budget. So I don't have like a nice bow to wrap on this either. It's just very much a wait and see what happens situation.
And I think to your point, and I speak from observing that, my daughter, when she was in college, she worked as a hostess at a restaurant in Baltimore. But she was explaining to me that different restaurants handle tipping differently. Yeah. So if you are a waiter, some restaurants say you get to eat what you kill. And if you give good service and on a $200 meal that somebody decides to be generous and tip you $50 or $60, you get to pocket that. But then some places you have to split it with the entire staff. And so, the sous chef who may not be on salary like the executive chef, who is mean and nasty, you have to split, you got to split your tip, or the disagreeable bartender, you've got to split your tips with them. And so a consumer really has no idea where the money's going.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked as a hostess as well, so I am also familiar with these dynamics. But I mean, you brought up a good point with the back of house staff. A lot of people who are in favor of Initiative 82 are saying that this is really to benefit those workers who don't have opportunities to make, really high tips like someone who's in the front of the house would. And, by not allowing them to baseline make minimum wage, which they're technically supposed to, but there's some wage theft that can happen sometimes in restaurants. So this is, to support those back of house workers who are not able to make as much as their front of house counterparts.
Harold, let me say this to you, because I get what I'm about to say is somewhat controversial.
No,
but I gotta say this. You referred to your daughter working as a hostess, I assume when she was in college.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see most restaurant workers. And I know it's wrong for me to say this. I see them as temporary jobs. I see them as jobs as sort of like a bridge job. You're going from one place to another. Even let's say if you were coming from another country to, here, you would work at a restaurant and work for, I call it an I-82 job like we're talking about, in order to go on to something better. So my view is controversial is that that's why I'm kind of iffy in terms of the raises, because these jobs really should not be full-time. I'm not saying full-time. I'm destination jobs. I think that's the best way to put it. But that's my view. I'm controversial on that, and people can disagree.
Well, some people may say started at the bottom, now they're here for the Paige Hopkins of the world. Let me not speak for Paige. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't know if I'm still working my way from the bottom. I don't but sure.
But yeah, go ahead, Paige.
No, I mean, I will say, I understand, James, where you're coming from. A lot of people, for me, my hostess job was a bridge to get somewhere else. It was a place for me to earn money over the summers during my college years. But I think for a lot of people, especially in DC, where we've already talked about the dining scene, there are very expensive places. There are very high-end Michelin star places where being a waiter in those restaurants is not an entry-level job. And it's not just a bridge job. It's a place where this is actually your career. You are a service industry, a proud service industry worker worker. And this is something that you want to do long term. And I think at a lot of the higher end restaurants, it's a place where you can do it long term, and it can be pretty lucrative for you.
Paige, hold your point. I hate to interrupt you, but I've got to take a quick break. Please do not forget your point. I'll let you continue on the other side. Don't forget you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The Original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation at the Reporters Roundtable with analysis of some of the top stories of the past week. My guests are Paige Hopkins, social media host at Axios, and James Wright, reporter with the Washington Informer. Before the break, we were talking about bridge jobs versus careers in the restaurant industry as it relates to Initiative 82. Paige, please continue your point.
Sure. Yeah, no, I was wrapping up. I think, whether someone is in a service industry job to, make ends meet, to get through college, whatever, or whether it's their career, I think the value of the job and that money is important all the same. And so I feel like the points of wanting to earn more, wanting to make sure you have a fair and consistent wage is totally valid. But I do think it's important to remember that not everyone is in this industry just for a short time. Sometimes it is the career by choice.
Yeah. Let's move on to another initiative. Next number up, I-83, ranked choice voting. I thought, James, that I would have to go back to college just to understand how this works. I think I haven't figured it out now, where ranked choice voting, which also has passed that first vote in the DC budget. Keep in mind that there are 2 votes for this budget process, where if you were unaffiliated, you can vote in a primary. So one would argue that everybody gets a shot from beginning to end. The second thing, James, where it's almost like, multiple choice. Instead of picking, the first person or the only person that you like, well, I'll pick number 5, number 4, number 3, number 2, all the way up to, to number 1. If I am a reasonably intelligent person, I think so. But I had been confused about that for a while. I'm just not still in tune with the ranked choice voting. What are your thoughts, James?
I don't like it. I really don't like ranked choice voting. And I do not. And you have cities like New York, they've picked up on it, and other places, not very many places, but other places. Look, I'm a traditionalist. Harold, I said I'm a traditionalist, not a conservative, but a traditionalist. Right. I believe that if you should go to the polls, you should vote for one person, the most qualified person that you feel should have that particular office, and not have some multiple choice soup type of decision about giving to a 1 point to this person and 2 points to that. That's confusing, and that's confusing to our senior citizens, and that's going to be confusing to people who are, Harold, you're brilliant, but not everybody is as brilliant as you in terms of figuring these things out. So I do not support this. I don't have a problem with open primaries. I think it's all on the candidates as opposed to the system. But I really don't like the fact is that the DC Board of Elections, has not educated the people properly on what ranked choice voting is. Even though 70% of the people voted for it, I don't think they know what they were voting for.
Paige, do you have a dissenting vote? or is your opinion a ranked choice opinion?
I like options, so I'm gonna choose all of the above. No, I'm just kidding. I think one, we got to put some respect on our seniors and our voters. I think people can figure this out, right? Like we just talked about there being very low voter turnout in this Ward 8 special election. The people who want to figure out, the people who care, They're going to figure it out. We're in the information age. Like if you want to know what's going on, you will. But outside of that, like we've seen that the divide tends to be establishment versus, younger, more progressives who are in favor of ranked choice voting, and the establishment who tends not to be. I think people who have run in elections and not gotten 50% of the vote, obviously, they're probably not going to be in favor of ranked choice voting, where you now need to have 50%. So, I mean, I can get both sides. I won't share my personal opinion, but I don't think it's as complicated as people, seem to think it is. I do agree, James, that there should be lots of efforts to put out information and lots of informational campaigns to make sure people are clear on what they're doing when they get to the polls. But once that heavy lifting is done, go for it. Let's do it.
Okay. Let us move on to the curfews. There is, of course, the DC curfew for young people that went into effect last week. But there's also a similar, not exact, but a similar curfew regarding young people in the city of Laurel. Mm-hmm. And obviously, Paige, there's been a lot of concern about unruly young people at Navy Yard, and to some extent, the wharf. The police chief and the mayor are saying that it has been a success, considering that there were maybe 2 violations over this past weekend. Do you think this is going to work long term?
It's tough. These are all tough issues, though. I guess none of them are easy. I am lucky to have a 2-year-old, so we're more focused here on, bedtime instead of curfews.
So we're not going to see the 2-year-old at the wharf or at that means, if we see the 2-year-old at Navy Yard or the wharf, that may say more about the mother than the child.
True. I will take that. No, but back to your point on the curfews, and these aren't even the only places. I was at National Harbor the other day, and I think their curfew starts at 5 p.m. Fact check.
Right.
Exactly. But that's a really early one. I think the curfew will only work as well as we are addressing the underlying problems outside of the curfew, right? Like being home by 5 p.m., by 8 p.m. is not the only issue here. Like the issues that lead to young people committing crimes, to young people stealing, if those issues aren't resolved, then the curfew won't work. So it's hard for me to say if it's working. I know this latest edition has only been a couple of weeks, I believe. Right. I think it's definitely a start. I think it's definitely helpful. And, obviously there are kids who will break the curfew, but if the majority are following it, then it will certainly help to not having large crowds, large fights, large things like that. But again, like there are so many systemic issues that are causing additional problems. So if this is just a Band-Aid, Band-Aids aren't inherently bad, right? But like you have to do more once you take the Band-Aid off, fix the scab, whatever. So, we have other work to do is my not so short answer.
Yeah, James, long gone are the days when you as a young person had to be home when the streetlights came on.
Right. And again, Harold, I'm going to say this. I'm not a conservative. I am a traditionalist.
Or the technical term, I think, James, is old school, but go right ahead.
The last time I was on your show, Harold, you quoted Ed Burrows, who is now the chair of the Prince George's County Council. And he said that the young people these days are bored. Now, my thing is, well, you said that he said it was that the kids were bored. And I'm one of these people that says bored about what? There's so much they could do. They could go to the recreation centers and they could go to each other's houses. They could go to the libraries and things like that. But they can't because the recreation centers are closed by those times. Or there's really no strong access at that time. It's restricted. And that's crazy. That's why they're out running around the way they are, because they have no place to go. And these governments are not providing these kids an outlet at a time that they know that they're out there, but they need to. And I agree with Paige. This is just a Band-Aid, this curfew. I don't like curfews, by the way. It kind of reminds me of, police state. But I just, you got to do something, but you got to do something for the kids. And I just don't think the curfew is like Paige was saying, it's a Band-Aid.
But I would also argue, and we've heard this over years past, that elected officials will say to parents, if you do not control your children, we will be forced to do it for you. And that is, as harsh as that may be, I think that's just a take on that old saying, it's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Mm-hmm. And whether it's the District of Columbia, whether it's Laurel, whether it's Prince George's County, whether it's Montgomery County, Baltimore City, or what have you, just about every elected official will say that parents need to address some of the issues with their children. And we do know that the children who are not getting caught out there, who are at home, a great many of them, Paige, are at home because mama said you need to be at home at a decent hour.
I mean, yeah, parenting certainly it plays into this, right? I think if your kid listens, not all kids listen, right? Like, right. Not all kids listen, and kids make mistakes. And I think hopefully we can continue to be a society where there's room for children to make mistakes. Hopefully those mistakes aren't, the hurting people. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the parents should be completely blameless. But I also think that governments, it's their right to, create some boundaries and to create some guidelines. And let's not, pretend that every parent is active in a child's life, or that every parent is home at night, because maybe your mother is a nurse that works overnight. And so you don't have anybody to check you and make sure that you're home by 11 p.m. So, I mean, it's tough to think of just a one size fits all solution here. I hear you, James, on the police state. Like, I'm for less regulation rather than more. However, I think this is a regulation that makes sense, and there's not a ton of other things we can do outside of fixing those systemic issues that I mentioned. But in terms of short-term solutions, I think this is probably one of the best options out there. But yeah, I'm just thankful to not have a teenager yet. I'll think more on it, and I have some years to figure it out.
That's right. Yeah. Let us know how that works out, because I'd love to hear it. I do want to move on to the next issue. The IRS has reversed a longstanding position regarding what is called the Johnson Amendment that prohibited churches and tax-exempt organizations from endorsing political candidates. This change in the policy, announced on the 7th of July, it permits houses of worship to endorse candidates for public office without jeopardizing the tax-exempt status. Is this good for the Black church, Paige? Or, I mean, as we know, whether they are, evangelicals in the Midwest or mega churches in Atlanta or DC or Houston, I mean, don't they already do that without doing it?
Okay, so that is exactly what I was going to say. I felt naive when I first started reading these stories, because growing up in Black churches, I'm very familiar with seeing politicians welcome to the church. I'm very familiar with, preachers, bishops, and religious figures endorsing, maybe not outright saying vote for this person, but certainly supporting certain candidates, rejecting the policies of other candidates. So from what I understand, I don't think this policy was very strictly enforced. Mm-hmm. From what I've read, this reversal is the result of some pastors who are Trump supporters who were investigated. The investigation went in their favor, but they had to spend a lot of money to fight that investigation and legal teams. And so I think ultimately that's what led to this change. I don't think it necessarily changes that much, though, because from my understanding, at least my lived experience, pulpits are very political places already. And I think a lot of people are okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, they've been political, at least, James, since the civil rights movement. And as we know, those political movements were founded in the Black church. So what's the big deal about this?
Well, as someone who really spoke out against the moral majority when they really came to power in 1980 with the rise of Ronald Reagan and with their leader, Jerry Falwell, this is what I think about when you mentioned that issue. That was the first thing I thought about. I didn't think about the civil rights movement. I thought about the moral majority and Phyllis Schlafly and all those folks back there. So I have a knee-jerk reaction of being against this. But I'm with Paige. We've been doing this a long time as a country. We've been doing this a long time. We just haven't formalized it. All this is now really is just formalizing it. I don't think it's a good thing. Again, I'm a traditionalist. I believe that the pastor should talk about saving souls and reaching for with this Jesus or Muhammad or whoever or the deity is, and not talk about who the best garbage collector should be.
Well, I hadn't planned on talking about this, but wonder what the Black church is saying about what's happening in Philadelphia with their garbage problems earlier. But anyway, we're not talking about that today. I do want to talk about the gaffe with President Trump when talking during a meeting at the White House and addressing Liberian President Joseph Boakai's English speaking skills, saying that he spoke such air quotes good English, and he was asking where did he learn to speak so beautifully. While this may have been shocking,
was it shocking though?
Well, no, it's shocking that we heard it, but not surprising. I was clutching my imaginary pearls because we knew that these things still happen, I guess. But I guess the shocking thing was, here we go again. But I wasn't surprised, Paige.
Well, I mean, I think the answer to the question, where did you learn to speak so beautifully, is Liberia, where English is the official language. But yeah, I mean, these moments I feel like happen every week at this point, and they don't move the MAGA base. I don't really think they move the anti-MAGA base either, because most people are so used to seeing the president say things that are perceived to be extremely offensive and inappropriate and racist and whatever. So yeah, I don't, what do we say? We'll be talking about something similar next week.
And I will say, some people say it's racist. I would argue that it is ignorant, because there are people, and the president can be included in that number, that he didn't know that English is the official language of Liberia. I would fault James, his staff, but his staff is also a reflection of him.
Yes.
And so either they didn't know or they didn't care and did not inform him. But again, it's shocking that we heard it. But James, been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
Well, you remember Chris Matthews? He's a former talk show host on MSNBC. He once said he was interviewing Obama, and he complimented Obama. And he said that when he was listening to Obama, he was so impressed, he forgot that Obama was Black. Now, this is
right. Oh, gosh, that was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but I do remember that.
Yeah. And it just reflects the mentality of certain people in this country whether they're liberal or conservative, or about how they think about we as Black people are, I'll be ignorant here, educated. And that when they think they're really paying us a compliment when they tell us, "Oh, you're so articulate," and so it's just that's just the way I see it.
Yeah, because it makes you. It's one thing if you're talking to someone from another country where English is not the primary language, where no matter what color you are, I mean, you could be talking to somebody who is from Russia who speaks fluent English, and you say, "Oh, yeah, that English may not be well." So, where did you learn to speak English so well? Well, I went to the American University and wherever, or my mother was born in the UK or what have you. Okay. But I mean, that's almost like, him saying, if you're born in Washington, D.C., he just, "Oh, your English is so good." So let us move on to, I do want to move on to, and this is really, I think this is really an important issue. This Shaquille O'Neal RG3 thing, where Shaquille O'Neal, because of what RG3 has said about WNBA player Angel Reese and this Caitlin Clark thing. So here's my caveat. I do not follow basketball. NBA, WNBA, couldn't play it, couldn't do it. So I look at this as an outsider. So I'll start with you, Paige. Gosh, Shaq is like, "I'm going to punch you in the face," meaning RG3, because he didn't like the things that he said about Angel Reese. What's your take on this? And is there a bigger issue here?
Well, there certainly is a bigger issue. My initial take is I love to see Black women defended, someone standing up for us. That, baseline, I like that. I think people's, just racist behavior, tendencies to, if you don't like someone, if you have an issue with someone, immediately you're calling them a monkey, which is what Angel Reese has had to endure. So obviously this is extremely problematic. But I think the issue deeper than that, the conversation from my understanding stemmed from whether Angel Reese hates her rival, Caitlin Clark. And to that I say, who cares? If they were men, we would be gassing this rivalry. Rivalries are great for sports. As someone who does casually follow basketball, the more rivalry there is, whether it's personal or just on the court, the better, the more entertained I am. These games are entertainment. And I feel like the idea that WNBA games should end with like hugs and slumber party invitations is just very sexist. Like, women are allowed to be tough and dislike each other and have rivalries just like men are. And so I like to see a Black woman stood up for, and I think we should allow these women to be fierce competitors.
Do you think, James, that if Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark were the same color, that this would be less of an issue?
No. Let me tell you what. Let me answer your question this way, Harold. The reason is the problem is RG3, and the reason is because he can't deal with a strong Black woman like Angel Reese. By the way, I like Caitlin Clark. I like what she does for the WNBA and how she is expanding the brand. We should support Caitlin Clark as a player and as what she's doing as an ambassador for the game. But let me say this: RG3 has no business doing any type of criticism of Angel Reese as a person. He can do it as a player, but not as a person, and certainly having anything to do with monkeys and sending things out with monkeys. And I'm not going to get into the fact that who RG3 is married to. If he wants to go that direction in his personal life, that's his business. He has a right to. There's a constitution that allows us to do that. But I don't think that the Constitution should sanction insecurity and self-hatred.
Well, and I would also say, as I said, as an outsider, I wholeheartedly agree with what Paige was saying. This is sports. This is competition. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark are, first of all, extraordinary athletes.
Yes, they are.
They have been competitors since they were in college.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I don't believe that their gender has anything to do with their competitiveness. And like Paige says, who cares? I will say again, as an outsider, because the athletic prowess of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese has risen to the level of news, and not just sports news, but when it has become, part of the news, that's when I started paying attention to it. And let us be honest, Caitlin Clark is a bad girl.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she is, they say, white men can't jump when it comes to basketball. Well, white women can't jump either, but the black women can't jump either. That's why we don't see any dunking. Who cares? It is, and I have watched the WNBA. I mean, the WNBA, and honestly, they do a whole lot better than I could.
I have seen some dunking in the WNBA.
Thank you. Correct me, because I'm not, and I don't watch it enough. Okay, go ahead.
No. I mean, I think we're all making a similar point, which is you can like Caitlin Clark and you can like Angel Reese. It's not an either or. I think a lot of the pitting them against each other comes more from media conversations, probably than comes from the two of them. I think we think about their rivalry probably a lot more than the two of them. But no, I mean, Caitlin Clark I think she's done a great job paying homage to the Black women who paved the way for her and who came before her. I think she has acknowledged that. I believe that she has acknowledged that Angel Reese has had to face some unfair and unacceptable racist behavior from basketball fans or whatever. And I think that we should support, like I said before, the rivalry in the WNBA. Like, women's sports profiles are rising and the rivalries make it fun. Like, let them have a rivalry. Let them hate each other. We all have peers that we don't like.
Yes.
Yeah. And let us hope that in the end, maybe this dust up and others like it will hopefully lead to these women making more money.
There we go.
So I think that's a good place to end this conversation. Paige Hopkins, James Wright, thank you both for joining the conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, July 16th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.